double trouble here for the Mid-Season Brawl Playoffs as we get into our next series of the day, which will be a double dose of North America going up against one another here in the lower bracket to continue things on. I'm joined to the left by Gillyweed, we have Trixler, and we have Fan as well. Overall, what we just saw in our first series was L5 looking dominant, looking strong, going into the next stage, but now gears change. We have one of our American teams being eliminated in just a few moments' time here, Gilly.
It's a bittersweet match for North America. It does mean that we have North America going on to be at least in the top 6 teams, but of course, once again, just like at the Western Clash, one of them has to eliminate the other, of being Roll20 and Tempo Storm. It's going to be a tough time, but also great to see NA moving on.
It'll be a tough time. Just like last time, though, we saw Roll20 walk away with a victory, just barely a 3-2. This is the 4th time these two teams are competing again this year, and I can't wait for it to unfold. Tempo Storm has looked stronger than ever, but Roll20, man, they continue to have that secret sauce, that explosion that I love to see happen here. And so I'm hoping that we go to Game 5.
Yeah, I think both teams have a lot to prove here. Western Clash, Roll20 actually did take out Tempo Storm, but in the regular season in the second half, Tempo Storm came out as first seed. So both teams believe they can win, and both of them are going to be going hard.
And that's the interesting dynamic between these two teams, that as much as Tempo Storm, they have, for the last year and a bit, I would say now, they have been first place. If you think about 2016, they were winning everything. But then when it did come to that Western Clash, Roll20 was able to get the upper leg on them. Could that be a repeat occurrence here? Does Roll20 just have that international presence here in 2017 that they're able to compete with Tempo Storm on this grand stage?
It does feel like Roll20, when you look at both results, has been doing a better job at this tournament. We've seen some issues for Tempo Storm, but I would almost give that to, when you look at the groups, could say pretty convincingly that Roll20 had the easier group. Both of the NA teams have went 1-1 with a big name team like MVP Black or Dignitas, but they've both also gone 1-1 with a region or a team from a non-league region. So I would say that both of them have very close standings so far, and it could go either way in this match.
Well, let's look in with the bracket and see what has gone on so far and what is to come, as we do have L5 having advanced down through that lower at the moment, and now a Roll20 is going to be going up against Tempo Storm, and the winner of that gets the opportunity to play against either Dignitas or MVP Black. So the tournament has got to the stage where every single match is getting hard, very, very difficult. So North America coming into this next series, not only do they need to scrap together for that opportunity to take it, but they need to bring that absolute A game to advance on Trixler.
And I think Tempo Storm is going to have their A game. I think the entire tournament so far, their drafting has been on par. They have looked great in their drafts, and that's been a theme for them for a long time now. So looking at Roll20, I think when they get in the game, that's where I expect them to outplay Tempo Storm for them to get that victory. But so far going into it, Tempo Storm, they're looking great, and they've even mentioned in the past, we know what Roll20 wants, and we can take it away from them.
So when comparing the two teams, I don't know if you would agree or not, but for me, I look at them, and going into this tournament, aside from the one tiebreaker that Tempo Storm had to play, I would say they're the more slow, the more methodical style, whereas Roll20 is the more aggressive, in-your-face style. Is that fair to say, having played against them, Fan?
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair to say. When you look at the games, you can really see that they both play exactly how you say they do. Tempo Storm, they love the macro game, they love playing the map, whereas, you know, Roll20, they do play macro game. It's not like they don't, but Glau makes his, you know, the team flows around Glau, and when he makes a call, they all snap follow it. So Glau tends to be aggressive, Roll20 tends to be aggressive.
Yeah, I would definitely put Roll20 as more of an explosive engage whenever they get the chance. If you look at Tempo Storm, it's more of a slow burn that you can see methodically breaking down in front. There is some criticism there, though. I think Fury, in particular, is missing out a little bit on some of his moments where he can be explosive, and I hope that as a team, they kind of like bolster him and let him have those moments, because when Fury is on point, this is a scary team.
All right, well, let's take a look at our first team to begin here in our second series of the playoffs. They're slaying dragons and traversing dungeons. It's Roll20.
The key to great teamwork, in my opinion, is you got to be patient with your teammates and you got to trust your teammates, and vice versa. If you can get those down, you'll be able to work well together. The difference between a team with 5 really godlike players and a team that works really well together, I'd say, is just the fact that ego can be set aside on the team without 5 god players, but the fact that they can work together so well compensates for that fact. My team's strength is executing a plan very clean and crisp.
Is what Tracer does best. Malfurion goes down, team wipe, core wipe.
I think we're really good at playing off of one another, and as long as we execute our plan properly, we're a strong team. When it comes to little individual situations in a game, sometimes we struggle. So I think that's our biggest weakness. I'd say I'm not particularly scared of any team here. I respect many teams, and the teams that I respect most are Fnatic, MVP Black, and L5. My expectations going into the mid-season brawl should reflect everyone else's. This is a world-class event. We're all here hoping to be world-class teams. I think we should all be striving for first place.
Always good to hear from Glaurung there, the captain of Roll20, as they look to upset their American counterparts once again, Gilly.
Roll20, one of the best advantages that they have had so far in this event is their drafting. Every other team has to treat them differently than everyone else at this event, solely based on the fact that they not only beat MVP Black with Medivh, but shut them out. Now, Tempo Storm has to decide, do we continue to control globals with our first pick and our first ban, or do we have to ban Medivh and give potentially something like a Dahaka up to Roll20, which they love?
And look at this guy right here, Justing. My golly bananas. This guy has been a wonderful tank throughout the last couple of major globals. I love watching Justing in particular on that Diablo. He knows how to condition his opponents to have certain fears between individual players and then suddenly flip it on their head in the late game to earn a victory.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important here to watch the drafting phase. As we all know, Roll20 has a very specific drafting style, and Tempo Storm being from North America, they know Roll20 better than any other team at this tournament, and it works both ways. Roll20 knows Tempo better than anyone, so it's going to be an exciting draft phase.
I think it's fair to say that Roll20 is the most, in my mind at least, over the past 6 months, the most hungry team in North America. They've gone from strength to strength. They showed it at the Western Clash, and they're trying to show it here as well, especially with that win over MVP Black.
I definitely agree. They are a hungry team. Glaurung has been at international events before, but he feels like he's never been able to perform there, and now doing well at the Western Clash, now coming in here, being in the top 8. They want to move on. They want to prove themselves versus all the other teams that are still left in this tournament.
And then, of course, is Glaurung, that we've mentioned before. And for me, he's almost the heart and soul of the team. When listening to his comms, you can hear him being relentlessly positive, even when they're behind Trixler. And having that kind of influence going into the game has to be impactful.
It's important. I mean, the growth of the team comes with the growth of Glaurung. This guy has changed so much over the last couple of years, and it feels like this moment is probably another breaking moment for Glaurung to go forward. If they can get this victory over Tempo Storm, he propels North America further than they've ever been before. They can start to really get into a spot where they can make a statement here at this tournament. North America is here to compete.
They are indeed, and of course, as much as we do talk up Roll20 going into this series, there is a team that has basically dominated North America for a good portion of time now, and that is, of course, Tempo Storm.
I think it's important for each player to have defined roles on the team and to be accepting of what they need to do. And when everybody kind of has that superstar mentality, there's inevitable clashes, and we've seen it time and time again, at least in our region, of kind of the alpha dogs butting heads and not able to work together cohesively. So accepting roles, accepting what you do for your team, and that it doesn't have to be as flashy as what someone else does for the team is vital to teamwork.
In the top lane, Soki puts Tempo Storm closer and closer back in the game. In fact, they're almost tied in experience. Fury moves in, is looking for Snitch. Snitch gets out. Twilight Dream connects, will be able to hit the Ultimate Evolution clone. Cocoon comes out, as well as Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead and Cattle somehow staying alive on the Pandas, but Fury going into the backside. They do secure the kill onto Greymane, but will it cost them their life? Mini goes down as well. Can they get the trade there?
As we are right now, we can't win the tournament. We have to get better every day. However, when we look at our play 3 days ago compared to now, we're definitely having better results against the top teams, and we're not taking it easy. We come here, we play our tournament games, and we go home and we just start scrimming against MVP Black and L5. We're going hard, and we know we need to improve in order to have a chance of getting a victory. Winning the MSB it would basically turn Heroes on its head completely. Nobody expects North America anywhere near the finals, so to be in a position to contend for that top spot, nobody would even know how to react. I imagine that it would bring quite a lot of interest into the game just for such an unbelievable occurrence at a major tournament.
You can't spell Tempo Storm without part of the title of the video game here, as of course they've been a dominant force in the American scene, Gilly.
They have, but they started things out rough here at the mid-season brawl. But they found their place within the meta, controlling things like globals, knowing that they can out-macro their opponent, and starting to bring in the Chen that MVP Black has as well. It all comes down to the fact that they have finally taken a game off of Dignitas. They have finally taken 2 games off of the Taiwanese team. So they've taken down all of the opponents that people believed were their Achilles heel, and finally are here to play against a team that they know very well.
Is there anybody trick that you go gosh golly bananas over in this roster, or?
I mean, I always talk about Fury, but I think this tournament, the one that's probably impressed me the most is Caterpillar. Caterpillar has been doing a really good job of just showing up at this tournament, but his Chen in particular has been great to watch, and how his team has backed him up for that Chen gameplay. I listened to them on comms a little bit when they were playing the Chen, and it was like, hey, just let Cattle do whatever he wants. Us 4 as a quad, we play together, let Cattle get in the front, and they trust him that much to be that impactful in fights that the Chen has been spectacular to watch.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think the Chen is going to be potentially a key part of this series. Chen is actually, in my opinion, one of the better heroes against a Medivh if you let it through, because Medivh has no stuns, and he's actually really good at tanking all of Medivh's damage, and he can chase through portals and just get that annoying damage over time onto the enemy team. But other than that, I think Tempo, another unique thing about them is they don't really have like that star player, the Glarong or Justin. So every one of their players, I think, you know, depending on the day, can show up. So they really have a balanced squad. So looking forward to seeing how they do.
Well, here is Chthonluk, of course, one of their main players, I would say, when you kind of look at their roster. What do you make of Chthonluk?
Chthonluk has gotten to be a very safe, reliable, dependable laner for the team. You can see that Abathur stats were really good for him. That's one of his best heroes. But before, where he may have been prone to getting picked off in the solo lane now, he is far safer and is one of the core ranged components of their composition.
See, she mentioned safe, and that's true. I feel like Tempo Storm, you can put safe on them as a brand, but that kind of scares me a little bit, because sometimes I feel like they're in moments where they're afraid to lose, which makes it very hard to go for the victory or the win. They're playing a little bit on the passive side. Sometimes when you get behind, you have to have those high-risk, high-reward plays, and that's where you have those playmakers from. So this team, as a squad of safe players, need to figure out how to make that work in some form, especially against Roll20.
It's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because at Western Clash, they went to Game 3 against Roll20, who was teammate back then, and actually they had a moment where they wiped teammate and could have gone for a core, and they would have ended the game. But they didn't realize they could go for core. They went for a boss play instead, and eventually Roll20 turned the game on them. So they have to really be looking out for what they can do. They can't play too safe, because that's what lost them Western Clash.
Loving seeing that Battlefield of Eternity once again is the pick for Tempo Storm in the Battlegrounds, because this used to be a battleground that Roll20 could bank on. They know that Tempo Storm is going to ban Infernal Shrines, but they could bank on getting a victory on Battlefield of Eternity over them, because that used to be a weak battleground for Tempo Storm, but no longer is this the case. That could drastically change how the rest of the series goes for Tempo Storm, and that right there is one of the biggest reasons why I feel like Tempo Storm has the edge in this series.
I think the last time they played in League play, I think it was quite close, no? Do you recall? The
last time they played in League play, it was a 3-0 in favor of Tempo Storm.
So that one wasn't the close one.
No, that was Western Clash, that was 3-2. So.
Right.
But that was the very first week of Part 2, and that was the time when Roll20 had to play versus Gale Force and Tempo Storm in the same weekend, so they did not have the same kind of practice that they were accustomed to. And since then, that's been a good point for them, as they've learned to build themselves back up after that difficult time.
First week going up against Tempo Storm and Gale Force, that must have been a hard task, Fan.
Yeah, it definitely was a hard it was a hard task for Roll20 there. I think Glarong was visiting Japan like right before then too, so they were out of practice and they had to compete against the other top 2 teams in North America. So it's going to be a lot closer this time around, I think, and you know, looking forward to what happens on Battlefield of Eternity here.
Are there any things that you kind of see as something you would expect coming onto this map, looking at the 2 teams?
For me, I'm hoping to see a little bit more Cassia control from Tempo Storm. I feel like they play that style very well, and I think it can work here on this battleground in particular if you're able to put a great foundation in the middle. I am wondering about the control of Dahaka, though. Dahaka needs to be controlled really well, because he's being played more often in this battleground than I've ever seen in the past. And if Dahaka gets through and you do pick the Cassia type of composition, you might get left to dry in terms of experience.
I mean, Global's strong, but is it more about now the fact that he is so fast and can, in a lot of those skirmishes in the middle, since there are very annoying bushes for people to deal with, he just suddenly gains that speed boost and then suddenly he is Speed Racer.
Yeah, he gets the jump on people and all of a sudden it's a raptor jumping out of a bush, grabbing you with his tongue. It's not it can be pretty scary for a team, but I think the biggest deal is knowing how NA and in particular Roll20 plays this battleground. They want to keep up split soak, and Dahaka is the easiest for them because there's very little downtime between when he's soaking and when he gets into the fight.
Yeah, one of the greatest advantages about the Dahaka is the speed that you're mentioning, but because of that, they're able to sit in that side lane and get to 10. And this map is all about who can get to 10 first, get that fight, and win that second Immortal phase. So Dahaka will definitely be on the table here if it's not banned out.
What I really want to see here is why Tempo Storm picked Battlefield of Eternity. It's their first map. Teams will always have a plan for their first map pick, if not the whole series. Yeah. And further than that, Battlefield of Eternity has historically been Tempo Storm. It's been one of their worst maps in terms of win rate, and it's been one of Roll20's best maps in terms of win rate. So if they picked it, they have to have some kind of plan coming in.
One of my questions is that we haven't got to see NA going up against NA at all this tournament. They've both gone into separate groups, etc. What happens now, looking at the tournament? We've seen the meta develop in an interesting way as we do get into draft number 1 here between Roll20 and Tempo Storm. The winner will advance on in the lower bracket. The loser goes home and Medivh gets banned.
There will definitely be some off-meta-ness here and there that I think gets further and further the longer we go in this series. If we get to games 4 and 5, there's definitely going to be some adjustments, but I think this will be closest to the tournament meta so far, which is what we see. We see Tempo Storm banning Medivh too, so not focusing as much on the globals. I also am questioning where Muradin is going to be between these two teams. Both of them have shown that they're willing to pick it before the second bans. Yeah. I'm wondering if that means that it will go further up in priority, or if not having the best success with him on either side, he will be pushed down.
So in this particular draft, we see Tempo Storm banning out the Medivh. It's pretty much been perma-banned against Roll20. Makes a lot of sense here. And Tempo actually gets their first pick Genji. It's one of their most comfortable heroes. They seem to always prefer to run the Genji. But on the other side, Roll20 getting the Anubrak in the mouth. Strong picks for both sides right now. Yeah. I would prefer a Greymane pick here. I think Muradin in this situation is okay because the Uther is already banned. So outside of the Greymane, there's not really many other super powered picks left. Yeah. I do like that for a long time. I think that Roll20 banning out Medivh against them as Tyrael and Abathur do come in. It used to be, it is almost the standard, but as soon as they beat MVP Black with it and a 0-22, that's the seal of approval. We're never letting them have it ever again in any tournament ever. So it's impressive stuff.
At least not here, where you can portal a Varian, a Diablo right on top of a stun from the Immortal and drop someone else right on top of that. But Tempo Storm getting Abathur for a double Genji, the symbiote on top of Genji too for extra damage. Even though it's Battlefield of Eternity, it's still going to be able to provide a lot of split soaking too. I wonder if they're going to ban Dahaka now or Li Ming, since you see the Anub and Malfurion for Roll20.
Yeah, the Dahaka and the Greymane both jump at me as possible bans. The Greymane one because you get the engage, but Dahaka to stop the split pushing, and Dahaka has been taken away, which is something that we've seen a lot from Prismat. So what do you think we'll be seeing from Prismat later on?
So it looks like out here, the best two options off the top of my head would be something like a Greymane and a Li Ming. That would be pretty strong. The only problem here is I completely forgot about the Abathur, by the way. The Abathur, I think, is a very strong power pick. I think in the tournament right now, he's something like 13-0 or when the top 8 teams use him. So that is really, really strong.
Task Tracer coming in.
Ooh, I like that rotation.
This is an old special from Glarong.
So I think this is a really good move by Roll20 because what Genji Abathur does is it puts a lot of pressure on your backline. If you have a solo Li Ming in there, even something like a solo Greymane, you know, a Vala, anything without a lot of protection, Genji Abathur can basically one-shot them. But with the Tassadar and the Malfurion, and you have a backline that's super, you know, hard to catch like Tracer. Yeah, I really like what Roll20 did there.
We saw a very similar draft, not on this map, but it was from E-Star where they had an Illidan added to this composition. Could that work here against the Tracer Task? And then you have that, again, everything is dashing into you and everything is dying composition.
Chaos, yeah, it's definitely one of the greatest comps you can pull in if you want to go in for those hard fights.
Yeah.
What Roll20 is looking like they may want to do here. It comes down to what Tempo Storm picks up. Do we see them grab another tank, maybe more control overall, or are they going to stay in a spot where they just want to sit and be able to hold down the mortal phases while they poke away? It's going to be a Greymane pickup and a Rhaegar, so there we are.
Yeah, I like the Greymane pick a little bit more than the Illidan.
Yeah.
Tracer has been known to be kind of a soft Illidan counter because you can always have more Qs than the Illidan, so you can constantly kite him around. And we see the Chen last pick for Roll20. Huh. That's a really smart pick. There's no stuns on the side of Tempo Storm right now. It's going to get a lot of value.
Everyone's on the Panda Parade at the moment. This is a common thing now.
Well, yeah, when you have so many warriors that are in the meta, like Leoric, Tyrael, that just don't have stuns, there's just not a lot of ways to stop him from being able to drink his brew or even stop him out of Storm, Earth, and Fire, too, which has been the prevailing heroic ability chosen. This is the first time we're seeing Roll20's Chen. We have seen Glaurung play it in the past, even at BlizzCon when he was still on Untitled Esports. So I'm wondering who plays Chen and who plays Tracer in this situation for the team.
I think you have to give Tracer to Glaurung no matter what here. Allow him to get in there and be the aggressive player. Maybe Prismat going to be moving into it. I don't know. We'll see who will be picking up that Chen, but I completely agree with you here. There's no stuns. Chen is going to be impossible to kill, it feels like, unless you have full coordination. But the meanwhile, Tracer is going to be destroying whatever target she gets on top of, as she is not going to be controlled at all.
Yeah, the Chen, Tracer, Tassadar into no stuns. We've seen this draft before earlier in the tournament, and it seems like it's getting more and more common against these death balls where you have Abathur, Greymane, sometimes Illidan's, you know, Tyrael, sometimes Genji.
Yeah.
Just, you have no stuns, and these types of compositions are just so good against no stuns.
So as much as they do have Sanctification on the other side, surely Tempo Storm has to be quite worried if a prolonged fight does go on, with considering what they're going up against.
Yeah, definitely. Roll20 wants prolonged fights.
Yeah.
And that's the nicest thing is Roll20 are up against the Abathur, where Tempo would have wanted to make things draw out. Now they're all of a sudden against Tracer, who just reloads, and she can continue doing her damage. The longer it goes on, the more pulse bombs she gets. And Shin, who has Brew as well, is not as focused on making sure that he would have mana, say.
Yeah, if Tracer does overstep at any point, there is luckily Greymane here. Go for the throw is an old strategy. You can burn him down. Now, of course, Tassadar should be floating around that Tracer, but if there's a millisecond off, you can get a kill, and that's where you start to break the comp from Roll20.
Time to get predictions, starting with you, Gilly.
I'm looking at the composition of Roll20, and I adore it. So I've got to put my first vote on Battlefield of Eternity for Roll20.
I'm there as well. I'm going to go with the Dragon Slayers. Roll20 with the victory here.
Yeah, I think Roll20 has impressed me slightly more in this particular draft, and just based on their map history, I gotta give this one to Roll20.
Wow, across the board here to start things off for game number one. Let's see what chat thinks as well, as you can vote with the hashtag of either team. And they are on the Roll20 dice as well. 81% going up against 19%. Thank you very much, guys. We're going to be checking in with you in just a few moments' time. For now, though, it's time for game number one here in our second series of the day for the playoffs here at the Mid-Season Brawl.
Dreadnought, we are here. More importantly than NA, we also have tournament lives on the line here as Tempo Storm takes on Roll20.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see Tempo Storm with their tournament lives on the line, that they are willing to commit to an aggressive composition, though we know them to be one of the safest teams here in this tournament. I am excited to see what they do on Battlefield of Eternity.
A lot of implications are here as we look at the left side. We are going to have Roll20 as Justine is going to be on Anubarak, Buds on Malfurion, Glaurung on Tracer, Yoda on Tassadar, and Prismaticism on Chen.
And in the red, we are going to have Tempo Storm, where we have Psalm playing Genji, Fury on Tyrael, Kothin Luck playing the Abathur, Caterpillar on Greymane, and June on Rhaegar.
All right, so we already see the full top lane approach here for Tempo Stormers. They're going to be pushing up to the top. They're going to see if they can dictate some of the action as Abathur will be trying to defend that bottom lane push. And you think about Tassadar, you think about Tracer, doesn't necessarily have that early game siege potential that Tempo Storm potentially has.
Yeah, it doesn't have that early game siege, and with a, Abathur composition, anytime you can trade up into the front walls evenly with your opponent, you are going to be in fine position. Tempo concentrating their efforts up on top of Roll20, mirroring that up on bottom. For now, it's exactly what we would expect out of this North American Classic matchup.
Well, both teams willing to trade here early on, Dread, and right now Tempo Storm seems to have a slight advantage. Now they're diving onto Chen.
Did Prismat able to make it out there? I expected Tempo to be a bit more aggressive, but heavy focus onto the structures, I think is going to be the safer play there. Those kills early game, they are not worth that much experience, even less than a minion wave at that point in time. Focusing on the fort, worrying about enabling those immortals, and making sure, more importantly than anything, you're not falling behind when you have those Abathur compositions.
Dread, sometimes we see the race early on between forts, both teams willing to concede. Are you a little bit surprised that we see both teams willing to just give it up? I mean, especially one side with Abathur, one side with the less siege potential. Is this just okay? I mean, would one team have an advantage here?
So in theory, the fact that this accelerates the, the pace of the game hurts the Abathur by not being able to make it to the later stages with structures still being enabled. But also when you have the Abathur, you have that weak early game, so you expect your opponent to push. If you have the weaker siege, you want to mirror that elsewhere. So it's one of those kind of, double-edged swords where, yes, you do wish you could stop that, but you realize that you cannot, so you have to, at best, match your opponent. Luckily, that is the circumstance here for Tempo Storm as we find ourselves with the first Immortal phase.
Yeah, and, this is going to be the more interesting thing because Roll20 a lot of times has a little bit of a passive approach, but this time they found the full skirmish composition, especially circling around the Tracer. So we'll see exactly how aggressive they want to be going into the likes of Tempo Storm.
For now, just a lot of posturing here from the teams. You can feel the tension. Gloron constantly waiting to see if he can find somebody out of position, but it's going to be a lot of poke. Abathur getting the side soak. Chen now coming with the flank. What does Prismaticism want to do is Psalm gets a small engage, but again, it's just posturing here for these teams. You can feel the tension, really.
Yeah, they just want to engage, but they want to be hesitant. They're looking, potentially nerves, potentially trying to figure out their opening right now. As you can see, the Abathur mines going down. They're already cleared up by Roll20 and instantly pushing in. Roll20 starting to get some early immortal damage in here.
Yeah, the Roll20 getting that damage out, again, comes to the weaker early game of the Abathur, and Tempo wants to stall this out as long as possible. Chen with a beautiful rotation to make sure he misses none of the side soak through bottom, which is why we see Roll20 ahead up in the experience here and winning onto the immortal race. Roll20 right now is doing a perfect job of dealing with the composition Tempo Storm has created. Now, what they need to do is get a couple of picks or at least focus on this immortal and sieging up with it pre-10.
Oh, Tyrael, there we go. Tassadar is the first to fall as they battle it out with the pulse bomb over onto Tyrael.
He's got the smite to be able to get himself out. Gloron on the chase. He ends up dropping a recall, but June, he does not have the feet to be able to walk on out of that. Cattle actually gets around the root there. A missed root coming out from Buds, allowing Cattle to withdraw. So a 1-for-2 trade. Tempo Storm is fighting here.
They are, as we see Chen already going back in, and the immortal damage heavily favoring Roll20, which we expected again with the Abathur on the other side. You have Greymane, you have Genji. They'll have a little bit of race potential as it will be on the friendly side for them to attack, but Tempo Storm seems to be pushing in.
Again, Tempo Storm looking for this 1-4 because of the Abathur. Chen has moved to be able to get the side soak here. But right now, Tempo Storm, with Roll20 having their members backing up, thinking that it's going to be a full defensive out of Tempo Storm, they actually get a little bit of damage. Now they're looking to bring the fight on to the 4-man of Roll20.
They're definitely pushing in. You can see how aggressive they are, and they have the mobility to be able to do that. June supporting on the backside as Prismaticism starting to go in, trying to disrupt anything he can onto June in the backline.
Yoda's so very low. The bite is there from June. They end up getting the pick, and Greymane the entire time has been wailing away, trying to get that damage out. Malfurion ends up falling down, but this is Roll20 with a very low immortal, but at what cost? Because it's 2 men down, almost the third here. Tempo Storm, though they have lost this immortal, they have to feel good about how they played that early game.
Yeah, things not looking too bad. Again, it's a trade there, and we now see the experience from Abathur soaking. And when those skirmishes become very prolonged around that immortal phase, Abathur will get the best of them.
It very much will. And that half-level experience, that is not something you typically see whenever you have an Abathur on your team. So right now, again, Roll20 is kind of, they have the burden on their shoulders to make the plays here into this game because we know Tempo loves the slow. They love to play it out towards the later parts of the game. But even when it gets there, their execution may not be there. So Roll20 is still very comfortable knowing that Tempo Storm, their late game can sometimes be very weak. They go for the invade. Gloron actually getting the body block and stalling this out.
The roots are going to be there, and Gloron already had to use recall, and you can see he's trying to get out of there. He's got to dodge the Tyrael as the Eldruins goes in, and you can see they're starting to engage.
Manor Mule's going to lay down the line, is showing up here, but Genji over the wall getting a reset. Now going on to Justin, 2 members dead for Roll20, and Tempo Storm with this offensive composition, though we give him the criticism, saying, can they play this offensive early game? And even with an Abathur, they are beating Roll20 on, again, one of their worst maps.
It's 5 kills to 1, a full level lead, and you got to think that this early game pressure they've mounted is going to stretch into 10, Dread, by the time the next Immortal phase comes in. That could be a huge push in favor of Tempo Storm.
This is absolutely a worst case scenario because it's only exaggerated by the fact that Roll20 has 0 clear onto an Immortal. So if Tempo Storm finds themselves with a 10 spike, with an Immortal heavily getting shielding into their favor, what does Roll20 do? Chen can just, maybe throw a barrel or two. Beta Barbs is about the best thing that a Nubarak has to provide to those circumstances, and Glorong on that Tracer, all he wants to do is be looking for the kills. So right now, Tempo Storm, the stars are aligned, but do they have the execution? Because 6 minutes is usually not where you look at Tempo Storm as a major power spike team.
And it's just 6 minutes in, hitting 7 right now. Level 10 inching closer here for Tempo Storm. You got to think that when the minute 10 comes in, look for them to be aggressive. Fury just using the Eldruins to get out, no big deal. Dread, things I feel like are about to open up here for Tempo Storm.
They very much are. And I think, again, this just comes down to, this is a nice moment to see, has Tempo Storm learned in this tournament? Because we've seen some of their play, it's been slow, but you cannot ask, again, for better circumstances. So instead of Tempo Storm playing this out, getting a small lead, and yes, they do end up staying ahead, I want to see them demolish the next couple of minutes of this map, completely control every ounce of Roll20's desires and say, we'll give you whatever we give you, and not let anything past that go.
This is a massive opportunity. There is absolutely no threat from Roll20. Tempo Storm walks up. They do whatever they want to the Immortal. It's already down to about 25% and falling, and there's no response on the side of Roll20. Tempo Storm is going to have a very healthy Immortal here in just a moment.
Yeah, we look at Roll20 sitting with a 1-4, just trying to slow down things as a 4-man, realizing if we commit everybody with a full-on team fight, they did everything proper to make sure that they get the 10. But again, full shielding onto this Immortal, and no defensive siege, anti-siege, anything sitting on the composition of Roll20. I expect what Roll20 to do, get a little bit of damage, hope the shielding goes down, and once that happens, immediately dive past with the Task Tracer, with the Chen, and hope they can get a pick specifically onto June.
They have 10. Let's see what they can do with it. You are correct in the sense that there's really not anybody that can do a whole lot of damage to this Immortal from range. They're doing the best that they can with Tassadar and Tracer. You can see they're starting to push through the fort wall. They're starting to push forward, but Tempo Storm, they're not willing to pull the trigger just yet.
Yeah, I like this. Psalm is drawing aggro, trying to keep people busy onto the backline. Mule ends up dropping, and Prismaticism and friends are very much playing defensive, but so is Tempo Storm. They have the advantage, and look at, they drop a clone, and they aren't willing to fight. This is what everyone has been talking about when looking at Tempo Storm. There's the Cocoon.
Cocoon instantly under the Dragon Blade. Ancestral not able to land. Tyro going to be the first to fall in this fight. They now have their eyes set. June trying to walk away, but they turn down to the Cocoon target of Genji and take a 2-for-0 trade. Dread, I don't think they're done yet.
Yeah, Glorong is going to be in the chase here, and with Justin clearing right behind here now, Cattle finds himself with the same fate as the other members of Tempo Storm. But I feel like that exact moment was such a clear example of what everyone has been fearful of here for Tempo Storm at this stage, why we the analysis test looking towards Roll20 as the favorite in this tournament, and now it is all on Tempo Storm to say, we are better than that. We are the best North American team. And man, it's just amazing that it's still here in these circumstances, volunteering to go to BOE, drafting this style of composition, and still, when the moment is there to execute, patience is all Tempo shows.
Roll20. Is there a more dangerous team coming in here? When their backs are against the wall, they always find some way, somehow, whether it's the Medivh, whether it's the Tracer, whether it's the Zeratul. In this case, they dive right past. As you said, the minute it happened, and they got exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, it's going to be now, this is very common for North America to see this kind of patience and 5-man rotation, hoping to catch somebody out to make a major mistake here. In North America, we often see a trend of just patience without the objective, never heavy forcing or looking to siege here. And if anybody even has an opportunity to maybe make that happen, it would be Roll20. But again, they can't be feeling too good even after that last team fight, because let's be honest here, if you clone and have no intent to team fight, you got to feel like a little bit was given to you.
A little bit, and we're going to see the pressure now in the next Immortal phase. There it is. We've got the timer. We see the camp prioritization here. Roll20, they're stalling theirs, waiting to grab this closer to the objective as Tempo Storm looking to do the same as they start to rotate over to theirs.
Yeah, Tempo Storm and Roll20 will have near even timing when it comes to these Shaman camps. If anybody gains an upper hand, I'm only going to give it here to the Avatar composition of Tempo Storm just because that is the closest thing here that we have to a global in this matchup here. 3 seconds left, though, and we've got the Immortal phase. What are these two teams going to do? Tempo Storm's been loving the 1-4, but they have Clone online. I want to see them execute. When the Clone goes down, have that kind of offense. Don't let Roll20 move up onto them because, I mean, think about it. It's a Genji, Greymane, Avatar, Tyrael composition.
It's way too difficult not to be aggressive with that, and they're starting to move up just a little bit. It allows them to get a little bit of pressure on there. Psalm, though, taking the harassment from Tracer, and Tracer just walks up, walks back, and look at that health bar.
It's amazing. The entire time we see Chen has blatantly shown himself nowhere near this fight, no interest whatsoever, but Tempo Storm is going to stall this out, play the game safe. And now as this desk said it best, there's a difference from playing a slow game in a non-risk game and playing a game with the intent of not losing it. And right now, again, it feels like that is a curse that is haunting Tempo.
This is a perfect opportunity as Chen already cleared out. The minute Genji goes to clear out the Shaman camp at the bottom right, Roll20 pushes directly into the Immortal, gets some good Immortal damage on, and does whatever they want.
And that's exactly what I want to see when Chen goes to the other side. Roll20 is taking the circumstances and playing the game, whereas Tempo is just hoping Roll20 just goes, would you like this kill?
It just seems like missed opportunities. I don't know if it's just the nerves or the overall lack of aggression that we know Tempo Storm to be. You know, this is just, it's surprising to me to see those moments. Tempo Storm has such a focus on objectives that they just have that opportunity. They're not taking them yet.
They are not taking them yet, but Prismaticism looks like he's going to start it. Fury actually goes in very deep. Buds has to drop the Ice Block, and the Sanctification is there. Can he get the Dream? He does, but he is down.
He's down, and now we have the Cocoon in return. This time the Ancestral lands, but Fury will fall, and on the other side, Justin trying to survive the jukes, but he does go down, Dread.
Resets are there for the double Genji. Glorong is now looking for the retreat. Psalm actually getting that flank, and now with Yoda having no E remaining, 2 for 2 into the fight. But Glorong, he actually gets the damage output, making it a clear, even trade once more.
Oh my goodness, and now Cattle in a bad spot on this backside, but Glorong hiding does not have the Tassadar shield, so he will hearth back.
And that is now Roll20. Though that fight was not necessarily the best for them, and Tempo Storm for the first time actually initiating. I love to see that here from Tempo, but there's still a lot to be earned on their side because the Immortal is still significantly against them, and Roll20 is not far enough behind in experience to say that this is going to go over to them.
I want to see the approach of Tempo Storm. They're a little bit closer to 16 if they will try and pull that trigger the minute they hit 16, because the Immortals are on the allied side, so your allied Immortal is on your side of the map, so it's very difficult to walk directly into the other one. But Roll20, again, starting to put the pressure on the Tempo Storm.
They realize the 16 window is closing in for Tempo, and the Abathur is going to make it very, very short, so they try and make it happen. Glorong actually is the first to get initiated on, only going to drop a couple dashes, but Fury, there is going to be the knock-up, and again, patient play here from the teams, complementing that of Tempo as they lock in 16 Talonteers.
They do, and now let's see what they can do with it. Fury already trying to lock somebody out. The recall by Glorong, but he's on the backside. He is going to be the first to fall, and Dreadnought, the minute he goes down, their entire team fighting potential is falling apart. Prismaticism alive for the moment. Ancestral has landed onto Cattle.
Tempo Storm coming out explosive at the beginning of this fight, but they've only managed to net a kill onto Glorong. The Twilight Dream is there, and now Fury ends up dying. So 1 for 1 between the two teams. Good disengage there, coming out from Buds, keeping himself alive. If he ended up going down, Tempo wins this Immortal. So still an advantage here for Roll20, even though they were the first to lose a member in a fight.
They had to walk away. They recognize their damage potential is low, but their ability to stall is high. With this composition of Anubarak and Chen, especially with the Tassadar on their side, it made a really good job. But that Twilight Dream that was able to lock down Tyrael, if that does not happen, this fight looks a lot different.
And we find ourselves with Tempo Storm once again having the upper hand for a window, but they're struggling onto the objective. They're waiting for Fury to come back alive, but he is not going to be there, and that is why Roll20 moves up to this Immortal. Tempo conceding it almost completely, except Soul. debated if we wanted to go in there for a moment, but this is a huge immortal now for Roll20. This is where I expect Roll20 to do what Tempo Storm wouldn't. Just execute. Whenever they feel like the game is even close to 50-50, this is where they will thrive.
We see the camp that was picked up here by Tempo Storm being cleared out by Roll20, making sure that you have the minions that will be backing this Immortal to maximize the push. Without that, it's just the Immortal with no fluff around it, so to speak, as Justin goes in, lands on there. Prismaticism already diving the back, though.
Yeah, I like that knock-up setup there. If any of the members of Roll20 had been a smidge closer, they might have been able to get the execution. But now, Tempo, they realize it's not necessarily a fort that they want to defend here. The distance of safety between fort to keep is too long for a Tracer composition. They forfeit it here, but they have managed to rid of the shielding. So we're into the melee form. What happens here? Psalm actually goes in, got stunned out, forcing an E. A bit of a misplay on the side of Tempo, and Roll20 find themselves a bit of free damage now onto a keep. There is no mule on the side of Tempo.
There's no mule, and this keep is about half health, and the Immortal about half as well. Pulse Bomb onto Cattle, gonna do a little bit of damage. Fury starting to lock down in the back, but they're locking him down. The roots just miss, but Roll20, Fury?
He gets the Saints! The Ancestral Healing actually connects. Cocoon is going to be dropped and actually isolating one target. Now Cattle is on retreat. Gloron gets the first kill. The Immortal is still alive, but they return around. The Dream is there, and Psalm is now dead. Roll20 looks like they're going to be moving up into the core with only 3 members of Tempo alive, but they do have the clone still here.
This is a bad spot as 2 members are down on the side of Tempo Storm. The shields are already going down. The Roots are going to lock in members of Tempo Storm. Dread, the shields are falling, and I think Roll20 has done it here in game number 1.
Roll20 says you may have gotten first place in the league of HGC North America, but we are the better team on land, showing it first at the Western Clash and now again here at the Mid-Season Brawl for the first game. Tempo put up pretty much a clinic of the criticism many analysts, players, and teams alike have had of them in this game. And if they can identify that and turn it around, I still think that this very much could be Tempo's series, but they absolutely need to see that kind of change.
I don't really know what happened there at the end for Tempo Storm. It seemed like it was... Fury just went back out. I don't really know what happened there. There was just, it seemed there was some confusion on the side. Concede the keep back up, right?
I mean, I can see the argument of this is where they don't expect us to fight. It's not the game if you win that team fight. So Fury going in for the initiation, I wouldn't say that it's not a team fight that I wouldn't want Tempo to go for. It was a little bit risky, but I think the biggest thing is that there was blatantly a miscommunication with that initiation.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if that was Tempo Storm maybe kind of falling apart a little bit there at the end. We talk about their macro game and things like that. It just didn't seem to work out. But I tell you what, I know there's a group back there hanging out with Caleras that definitely wants to talk more about this game.
Is Jay Howe saying I don't want to talk about this game? I don't know, I'm not sure. But regardless, it's 1-0 currently here to Roll20. And it looked pretty even for a while. Looked like Tempo Storm was gaining quite a lot of traction in that, but Roll20 with that Punisher, oh boy, they went for it.
And also the moment they hit level 10 too, they did much better job of controlling Genji. They literally used Cocoon and Twilight Dream just to make sure that Genji could not be effective in fights. They played the numbers game. Anytime that Dragon Blade came out, instant Cocoon, they made sure to go chase someone out to push away Tempo Storm, then they came back, had the Twilight Dream, and focused the target down, and it worked every single time. Roll20 was on point in communication.
Twilight Dreams were always there, and you can rely on Buds to make sure that he's making all of the right Malfurion plays. And with June not playing Malfurion at all this tournament, Buds really can expect that he's probably going to get his favorite of Malfurion just about any game that they want it. So if Tempo Storm, if that is an issue for them and the way that Buds plays and coordinates with his teammates when he's on that Malfurion, maybe this is where we start seeing Tempo Storm try to take that away.
I think a good part of that game also speaks to the draft there. You really saw the game went as well as it possibly could for Tempo Storm. They were up an entire level with an Abathur comp. So if we could pause the replay right here, if we could rewind a little bit. So what I want to show you guys in this replay is how bad this fight was. So this is a level 15 versus 16 fight. So Roll20 is dealing with a talent tier disadvantage here. And not only that, you saw Gloron, he was being chased backwards. He used 2 blinks and then he had to recall, essentially giving Tempo a free kill. Tempo didn't use anything other than go for the throat, and that's a really good trade. So if we could play on here. So So Glaurung dies immediately there in this fight. It's still a talent disadvantage fight. Now, look at the Chen. Look at how much damage he's soaking. Look at how much time he's buying. He's 3 versus 1. You have no stuns. You can't stop him from ulting when he wants to after the maximum damage soak. The other thing important here is on this side, you see Buds. He patiently waits out the Sanctification. The second it ends, he does Twilight Dream. They knew Tyrael was at half HP there, instantly blow him up. And the Genji clone was not enough damage to kill them because Cattle, he was also web wrapped for like 8 seconds because Tempo had nothing to deal with the web wrap, nothing like a Tassadar or a Leeming Disintegrate to instantly break it. So you saw there, best possible case fight for Tempo Storm. They were a talent tier up. Glaurung literally E'd backwards into their team, gave them a free kill, and they ended up with a 1-for-1. That's just, you know,
I mean,
that kind of draft, it's really rough.
At least when he died off, he got his Pulse Bomb out onto the Grey Mane to at least allow some pressure to be on towards him with the Chen annoying him enough to force out the Ancestral Heal, right? So that kind of takes away some of the things that they had available, right?
Yeah, definitely. But in the end, you know, it didn't quite matter. The Grey Mane wasn't pressured. You saw the Chen just 3 versus 1 for like 5 seconds and then casually pops his ult. Just too much value.
I have a question for you guys. We saw Mule